So I remember a cold, rainy day in Amsterdam, and my mom had visited me. I was working in the museum world, art world already for a couple of years, and I wanted to share this with my mom. So I took my mom for the very first time in her life to an art museum, and very excited to tell her all about the famous Dutch painters. But when we came there and when we started to walk around, something weird happened. She wasn't impressed at all, and my quite tiny mom became even smaller, and she was just running through the halls and almost like wanting it to be over. And I got more and more nervous. I was giving her more and more information, and but look here, mom, and this is the famous, but she didn't care, and I so badly wanted to connect with her. And simply didn't know what to do anymore. And at a certain moment, all of a sudden, she stopped before a painting that I don't think I'd ever seen before. And she was looking at it, and then at me, and looking back at it. And she was, if I remember right, she asked me, what do these poor people's shoes do in the museum? Because in the corner of that painting was a pair of old farmer shoes. And she recognized that from her youth, and she just could not understand why this big famous museum would have her old shoes in it. And that was the first time that my mom connected with the art, and we started to talk about her life and her experiences, her youth. And through these shoes, I finally connected with my mom that day. And I think that was the moment when I realized that it's not always about the art, but maybe what I find even more important is that art can connect us, people, to each other. And by going through the art, it's almost an entry point to a conversation that in another situation can be hard to start. And that's why I started to design experiences where I hope people can personally connect with art, and after that with each other. My name is Guzijan. I'm an experience designer. I design experiences for art exhibitions, and I'm a research fellow at Provisions Library and Mason Exhibitions at George Mason University.
We do a lot of exhibitions, and the volume of exhibitions we do has been very high. But oftentimes, we weren't paying attention to how we were sustaining an audience interaction with the exhibition. So this whole idea that Diana brought to us of the art amplifier really shifted our way of thinking about exhibitions that we're planning in the future. So having people come in and find themselves in the exhibition so that they can reflect on themselves. That's the important key that I think that this is bringing to the process. I'm Don Russell. I'm the University Curator for George Mason University. And as part of that job, I am the Director of Mason Exhibitions, operating 7 galleries across 3 campuses in Northern Virginia. And I'm also the founding co-director of Provisions Library, which is a resource center for art and social change.
People go to art exhibitions for different reasons. To see something new, to escape from reality, to facilitate their learning. With some of these, an individual experience is enough. Marveling at the beauty of a Matisse, being in awe, that's all good. However, with art that asks awareness for social issues or that challenges certain beliefs, I think it's very important to go beyond your own views and beliefs. Especially today, when I look at society, I feel we are losing the ability to communicate with somebody who disagrees with us. I think art can be a tool to relearn this. So when I came across Mason Exhibitions and Provisions Library, I felt like I hit the jackpot. A research center for art and social change and exhibitions that are about today's social issues. It was the perfect place to experiment, test, and redesign my art amplifiers.
Hello, my name is Guzijan. I'm a PhD student in cultural studies at George Mason. I'm a graduate professional assistant at Provisions Library for Art and Social Change. My role here is I'm a librarian for Art and Social Change. Since we have like 35 meridians kind of theme topics navigating the relationship between art and society. So based on those theme areas, we kind of assist researchers and faculty and students for their projects, for their art, and for their research. And also we develop ideas for future exhibitions. So Provisions Library is kind of incubator for future exhibitions. So we do a lot of research for future exhibitions.
So here at Provisions Library, which has existed for 25 years now, the idea is to provide resources for people to research and engage in social change practices. When we first started, people would come in and say, well, what do you mean by social change? Because that was sort of part of our subtitle. And we sort of sat back on our heels and said, wait a minute, we're going to take a break here and really think about what we mean by social change. And so with a group of people and advisors and just general people in the community, we began to put together a list of topics, which we eventually called research meridians. And this was to encompass all the potential areas of society where art could play a role or has played a role, so that we can gather material together in a kind of alternative library that would link art and social change. It's important to note that Provisions has one foot in the social change world and one foot in the art world. And very few, if any, organizations really can abide that. They're either just all about art or all about social change. We're interested in connections across borders. So when we talk about these topic areas, we'll often choose one or more than one topic or 4 topics. And every time a topic intersects with another topic, it goes from a binary to multiple questions that can be asked at an intersection. So it's really about questioning. Provisions in its early phase and still at its core now is this idea of question what is and imagine what if. So those are the kind of guiding principles that really built Provisions Library. We assembled books that were both about art but also about the various meridians. We have a database where you can search by meridian to find out what books would relate to what meridian that you're interested in. Really, it's a stepping off point. We're not providing any answers or solutions other than to say that creative response is what we want to generate.
So if I remember right, the proposal that I sent you about this whole project that I did not really know what it was going to be, but it had a quote that is very dear to me, or that I think is very true. It's by Marcel Proust, the French philosopher and writer, and he says something along the lines of the real voyage or journey is not to travel 100 lands, but to see one land through 100 pair of eyes. And I so often want to know what other people see or think, and I think that's what is one of the things that, to me, when I visit a museum, is as interesting as the art. What do other people see, and how can we see more together? And my idea, which was very vague at the time, of an amplifier is to build something that makes that possible, to also capture observations of other people.
Right.
And you said, yes, come and do and try.
Yeah, I think, like you said, done before, we were very busy creating meaningful exhibitions, making exhibitions, but we didn't have enough room to navigate those kind of interaction between art and, visitors. So your came like perfect kind of moment. Yeah.
There's another quote by another Marcel. Marcel Duchamp, who said the audience finishes the artwork.
Yeah.
And that also really rang true when you mentioned Proust. And what is our effect? A lot of times people want quantitative results, and we can only show qualitative results. And so this was a kind of in-between point where there were measurable results, but they were visible.
Yeah.
Visible results.
Yeah, because that's the other thing that I think has always been sort of at the back of my mind, that I wanted, I was here, but in a meaningful way,
right.
of people who visited
right.
an exhibition. Because, I mean, we all love art, but...
Not everybody has been initiated or introduced properly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think many exhibitions are very, I don't know the English word, very lifeless. I don't mean it to be that negative, but very still.
Fixed.
Yeah, there is not much movement. They're very unmoving, or there is...
Eternal. It's
something...
part of a church kind of background.
And I was looking for ways to capture the presence of people who visited before.
And engage them physically too.
Yeah.
They have to not only think and choose, but then do something.
Yeah, and that's the first exhibition was Faces of Resilience. It was quite an emotional, compelling exhibition of works made by incarcerated men in this case. And I mean, it was a whole world that I did not know anything of, the American incarceration system, or the prison system. And but also this exhibition, it was 3 walls in a U shape with all the works on the wall. And one of the things that I noticed is that all the visitors would literally go follow the U line and leave. And I think it's such a different world that you enter. So in that first exhibition, I wanted to try 2 things. One is to bring in the context of the maker into that space. And the second was to have, and that became a bit of a red thread, to make people leave with questions on their mind. Just because I think that if you leave with a question, you will process longer than if you leave after a period, like point, this was it, okay, and then I go on with my life. But if you leave with a question, it might linger. So my assumption was that the impact would be higher. So what I did in the first exhibition was to bring the context into the gallery. Is I used the floor to bring in 3 elements. One is a floor plan of a cell, because it was all explained in the text. It's 12 by 6 foot for 2 people, but you read it and you're like, okay. But then when you see it taped on the floor with like 101 real size dimensions, with the bed and the table, and I even had 2 chairs, it's for 2 people, then it's different. And the second element was time, because some people are in for 35, 37 years. What does that mean? So I had 37 lines on the floor, so you literally could physically walk through time, and you saw people like, oh, because there were, even after the first 11 years were the hardest, and so there were some quotes on those lines. So you feel time. And the third was that I had put dots on the floor, as many, it was 8,543, I think, which is the amount of prisoners in that one specific prison where the works came from. So to bring the context into the gallery, and then, well, that worked. And the second was, can people leave with a question? And the big question a lot of people had is, no, people are not able to generate questions. But I had set up a corner, and this was all in a weekend experiment setting, and invited them, please leave here a lingering question. And from those 3 days that we did the experiment, we gathered around 60 questions, and they were really meaningful. Some were about the system, some were about themselves, so all different kind of questions, which prove that if facilitated, people can ask questions. So that was the first experiment with the art.
I really liked where you can choose a question at the beginning,
Yes.
where you get one randomly, I don't know, one or the
Yeah.
other, and then you carry that question with you at the end, and then when you return the question, you have to come up with your own question
Yes.
to add to the process.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
I mean, there were different variants.
Yes.
Because we were experimenting. It is always an experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I really liked that your kind of observation about how people move in the gallery, because we never thought about it, right? But if there is a specific pattern, that pattern kind of limits people's kind of view on art, their movement. So I think you really kind of changed how people move in the gallery through your the project. So it really kind of diversified how people move, how people enjoy art, how people connect, different pieces of art in the gallery.
Yeah.
Not following the same pattern of movement.
Right.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, I think it all links together. It goes from explanatory, like the very defined gallery behavior, like art, label, move on, to exploratory, where you can make your own path.
Yeah, I think it created a lot of freedom for people. It's not just seeing art and reading art, but they have this kind of freedom, how to move in the gallery, how to connect different things in the gallery. So it was really good. I liked it.
Yeah, that was special. My first amplifier.
What was the second amplifier?
The second was a closer look. It was the show about the war in Ukraine with works from artists. There was quite a simple experiment that was okay. In the first one, I was there all the time, directing people, asking them to leave a question, and then it was, so what if there isn't this person? Can people independently, if we design it in a right way, can people independently take a question and leave a question? And yes, they can, but the quality of the questions was lower, and what was difficult there is that I asked them to take a question. They could choose from 3, enter the exhibition, and then at the end write a new question on the back. But that was quite a complex prompt, because often you would see that they would either give an answer or not move away from that. So I think what was clear that yes, we can design an intervention that invites people to engage, but it has to be simpler. It has to be like a simple prompt.
You have to make that connection for people.
Yes.
Yeah. I think what's kind of underlying all this for me is, changing people's attitudes when they come into a gallery space or an art space. Usually they're there just to receive, and here you're there to learn. It's more than just receiving. You're asked to actually engage with a learning process, and in order to do that, you need to make them want to do that.
Yes. Yes.
And also, I have a question. You mentioned quality of questions. So how do you define the quality of questions? So, what is a good question for you?
Yeah, that's a great question.
One that makes you want to go back into the gallery and look again.
Right.
To me, that is what defines a good question. Because in the end, it's already in the word itself. It's an art amplifier. So you want, or yeah, I think we want to make the contact time and intensity as high as possible between a visitor and an art.
What was another one? What was the next?
Yeah, I think that was the most successful in many ways. It was nothing personal, and I liked sort of moving up. Though it was, I got a whole wall.
That's where we really, from the beginning, you were engaged.
Yeah,
otherwise,
true.
you were just sort of joining in and changing something that kind of already existed.
Adding something, true.
Yeah, it became a really big component of the exhibition, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just an editing thing, it
True.
was, a big part of the exhibition.
Yeah.
So in Nothing Personal, I mean, you can explain better what Nothing Personal is about.
Oh, okay. Basically, there was a book called Nothing Personal. It was a collaboration with Richard Avedon and James Baldwin, the famous photographer and writer. It was published in 1964, and it was a Baldwin essay, sort of paired with a sequence of Avedon photographs. And it was really to capture the mood in the country in 1964, immediately following the assassination of Kennedy, but maybe just before the Vietnam War really kicked off, and the Beatles came and all these things. So it was really a time capsule for us that had many resonances with the present. And the eloquence of the author and the artist were just such a great basis. A lot of people at the university didn't necessarily know who these people were, and to be able to take this book apart and put it on the wall in a really dynamic design display gave people the opportunity to experience the book almost like a film, almost like a narrative environment. We also added a chronology of the 1960s, which really placed this book as a protest book, as a form of protest. And we thought it was important to show all the other forms of protest that were kind of born in the 1960s with civil rights in Vietnam primarily, but the many other, the gay rights movement, women's rights, ecology, all these movements really have really took root or began to sprout. I'm not quite sure the right metaphor, but in the 60s. So it was educational. We did a lot of programming with poetry and panel discussions, and we had this art amplifier component that was really built into it. Maybe you could explain that.
Yeah, I think also in the introduction text, what was important to us is to not have this feeling of entering a time capsule. So we did not want the visitor to leave with, oh yes, this was about the 60s.
Right, this was a history lesson.
Yes, so what we wanted is to create, or for people to create a connection between the 60s and today. So what we did is we placed a wall in the exhibition with, on one side was like a very low threshold personal connection that asked 3 questions to people. How often do you face inequity in your life? How much has actually changed since the 60s? And what are you willing to do for a better world? And people could reply with dots. Anybody can do it. So that had 2 functions. First, to, as I said earlier, to make people part of the story, so they enter the story that we created by answering for themselves how they think about these 3 themes in the exhibition. And the second function is that you got a sort of collective answer. So we had this cloud of dots that said something about how we as a community or all visitors together think about these themes. And then on the other side of the wall, adjacent to the timeline, there was a very simple prompt, learning from the previous amplifier, is 2024, questions that still matter today. And people could put up questions that still matter today related to the exhibition, to the 60s. And that became quite a huge success. We had over 300 questions. And that in itself is great. And you saw people standing in front of it and like, oh yeah, and then sometimes going back. But what I thought was even better, or even a bigger, I don't know, how do you call that? Success or present. Based on this question wall, there were classes or professors that wanted to have a discussion with these questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we have there's a small team called Dialogues and Differences. They tackle tricky topics, or they teach students how to mediate or facilitate complex discussions. The coordinator took 10 questions that he thought were really interesting and set up a whole dialogue event based on the questions of the question wall that were based on visitors that had visited.
Mm-hmm.
So you get this sort of, snowball effect. That was one. There was the philosophy club that used questions to have philosophical. And this I do think it's because they are posed in question form instead of statement form.
Right.
They invite to think again, or they invite to talk about it.
Right. Part of what we want to do with Provisions exhibitions, Mason exhibitions, is to almost curricularize, prepare the exhibitions in advance so that professors can easily extract ideas and apply them in their own particular discipline. And going across disciplines is extremely important in this light.
And also I think Nothing Personal had a second show in Arlington, right? So when it was here in Fairfax, it's all about class, curriculum, kind of learning experience. And when it moved to Arlington, I think it's kind of different atmosphere, environment, different audience. Did you catch any difference between Nothing Personal here and Nothing Personal there regarding your Art Amplifier project?
Yes, and the questions were more specific, and that could also have been because the prompt was a little bit more specific, the invitation to leave questions. So it's after all it's a learning process, but so it's interesting how every detail matters in inviting people to ask questions, because question in itself is good.
Hi, my name is Guzijan. I am a research fellow at Provisions, and I'm very excited about tonight. We have a closing event for Nothing Personal called What We Bring to the Table. With a group of these 10 people who are about to arrive, we are going to explore what the American dream is. If we can maybe redefine it and find ways on how to make the American dream reality. All happening tonight, super excited.
One of the themes that kept coming back through Nothing Personal in the questions and in the student sessions was the American dream. And I think personally it's fascinating, but I was looking for a way to almost amplify the amplifier. So how can we deep dive into conversations? How can we share our personal connections to this exhibition? And so we set up the final event called What We Bring to the Table, and everything came together: people, food, art. So we had a dinner where everybody brought an object related to their personal story and thoughts about the American dream. So we shared all these stories, then went back into the exhibition to look for connection points with these personal stories. Then came back to the table to discuss what each of us can do to get closer to the American dream together. I think that was an interesting conclusion, is it's not your American dream or my American dream. It is our American dream, or as you said, it's about dreams in America, and every day we can do something. And I think that is coming back to the beginning when you talk about provisions and social change. We can't measure it, but we can try to create an atmosphere where people do want.
Yeah, exhibitions are a context. Spaces are just context for things to be in.
But it was a long journey, right? It was beautiful, but
Offerings was amazing. Offerings was great because we were building a world. As I think I mentioned in the first, when talking about the first amplifier, you want to bring the context into the exhibition space. And with Offerings, what we wanted is this hint of some sort of an abstract landscape consisting of trees and a river. The river is really important. So the amplifier had two parts. One is again that context. So we built sort of abstract trees and we taped a river on the floor and we brought that space to life. And I think the biggest compliment to me was, I don't know if you know Buchanan Hall, but to me Buchanan Hall is not something beautiful. It's a little bit of an older rundown atrium in mushy colors, and then we built this exhibition with all these big tubes and there's a very blue river flowing through, and there was an artist coming in and she was looking around like, oh my god, this is a beautiful space. And I think that's when I thought, we did well. But the cool thing about this was that we transformed the space, and by that made people want to come in and see it instead of having glass cases. So there was, what's going on here? And you see when you sit down there that it's hard to resist to come into this space and see what it's about. So that was the first part. And the second part was that this is the only amplifier that was not about people inviting people to pose questions, but inviting people to experience what the show is about by giving them a prompt to go outside, connect with nature, and share that. So we do have a small collection of people who did go outside, took a picture, and shared what connecting to nature meant to them.
Yeah, and also I think for that show, you also kind of designed the exhibition space, not only the art amplifier aspect. So like art amplifier was really embedded into exhibition design. So looking back, I can see the expansion, because for the first art amplifier, you added something after when the show is kind of up. And then for second part, nothing personal, your art amplifier become a big part of the exhibition. And for the offering show, it's so embedded into exhibition space, like everywhere. It becomes like one art amplifier in the exhibition. So I can see that kind of expansion and then it's kind of immersion of your project, art amplifier, and then exhibition and artwork. So that is beautiful kind of transformation, I guess. Yeah.
Another important part of that show was the student engagement with it. It was all part of a public history class. They had selected with Professor Gabi Tayak all these objects. But then student photographers got involved. So here we were working almost exclusively with student artists and researchers, and giving a context way beyond what they maybe experienced before. We're going to generate some museum professionals that have this as an embedded idea in exhibitions, to have an amplifier.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I learned is to move based on trust. It was the trust that Provisions and Mason Exhibitions gave me, and me learning to not execute a plan, but to experiment, see what happens, and then move on. So the first conversation I had with Alyssa in Arlington was very funny, because she was, what is it gonna be? And I said, I don't know. So what is it gonna do? I'm not sure. I just hope that it will. And the more confused she got, the more confident I was in trusting the process. But I think it's quite rare to come to a place, have some ideas, have good talks, but then to get the freedom to experiment. And to me, that was really a big gift, to actually be Pippi Longstocking. I've never done it before, so I think I can do it. And you believed me. Yeah, that was big. And I think Nothing Personal was the biggest show, possibly the most successful amplifier. But to me, Offerings was the dearest, because we all together built a pretty awesome exhibition. Once again, we ordered these big cardboard tubes of 12 feet tall, and there were around 30 of them, like a big wood, and I entered the room with Jeff, and it was the first time that I thought, is this really a good idea? Because there they were all lined up, just cardboard tubes. But week after week, everybody in this team and beyond contributed to that show, and that feeling of building something together, that was great. That was just, I think that's the fondest or biggest, most heartwarming memory I have. Regarding amplifiers, yeah, I had an idea that we can improve experiences of people in galleries, and the idea worked out, and I think there's definitely something here, but it's just sort of seed that I planted. We can explore, experiment, research so much more, but I do think definitely in exhibitions around social issues that involve all of us, that we did find a way where conversations can start, and not only start, they actually happened. So I think professionally it is something that I want to continue working on, and also hopefully guide or work together with other people who want to develop it on this side of the world. But then as a team and as being part of this group, that was just amazing.